not the weight of something you discovered yourself. That weight is immediate, sharp, arrives with the full force of direct contact. The second-hand secret is different. It travels through another person before it reaches you, and in the traveling it picks up the specific texture of the person who carried it. Their hesitation, their decision about whether to pass it on, the particular quality of someone who has been holding something that does not belong to them and has finally decided that giving it away is the more honest choice than keeping it. She said, "I probably shouldn't tell you this," which is, as everyone knows, a sentence that guarantees the telling. I want to explain the context before I explain the secret. Not because the context is interesting in itself. It is ordinary, the kind of circumstance that does not warrant description in any other situation. But because without it the secret lands wrong. Lands as smaller than it was. The context is what gave it the specific weight it had. We were 3 months in. Not the early months. We were past the early months in the way that matters. Past the phase where the good behavior is indistinguishable from the actual behavior, because the actual behavior has not yet been tested by anything real. We were in the phase after that, the phase where you've seen some of the actual, not all of it, enough to know you were dealing with the real version rather than the presented version, and the real version is the thing you want to keep looking at. I had not told her certain things yet, not because I was withholding. I have no talent for withholding. It has never been a skill of mine. Because some things take time to become sayable. Because the interior of a person does not unpack at the same rate as the exterior. Because certain things that are true require the specific trust of time before they will allow themselves to be carried from the inside to the outside without losing something in the transit. I had been carrying one particular thing, not consciously. I had not identified it as the thing I was carrying. It was more ambient than that, more structural. The way a room has a quality that is not about any specific object in it, but about the arrangement of all the objects together, about the light and the proportion and the specific feeling produced by the whole. The thing I was carrying was like that, present in everything, not locatable in any one part. She told me the secret before I had found the words for any of that. The secret came from a mutual friend. I will not name the friend. This is not their story to be named in. But the mutual friend had been talking to her. Not a planned conversation, the accidental kind, the kind that produces the most honest exchanges because neither person arrives with an agenda. The mutual friend had said something about me, about what I was like before her. Not dramatically. The mutual friend was not delivering a character reference, just talking, describing the specific quality of me in the months before she appeared in my life. I mean, what the mutual friend had apparently said, I am giving you the reported version, the filtered version. The version that arrived through one more layer of human interpretation before it reached me was something like he was present but not landed, like someone waiting for a flight that hadn't been announced yet. She said this to me with the specific hesitation of someone who has decided that the true thing is worth the risk of the reaction to it. I sat with the image, waiting for a flight that hadn't been announced yet. I have thought about that description more than the mutual friend could have anticipated when I said it casually, in the conversation that was about something else entirely, because it was accurate. Not in the way of an observation that captures something I already knew about myself, in the way of an observation that names something I had been unable to name, that gives language to the quality I had been living inside without having the language for it. The specific, clarifying accuracy of someone seeing you from the outside and describing what they see in terms that reach the inside. Waiting for a flight that hadn't been announced yet. Yes, that was it. That was the specific quality of the previous months. The presence that was real and the unlandedness that was also real. The life that was genuinely being lived and the simultaneous awareness below the level of the articulable, running in the background of everything. That something had not yet arrived that would change the quality of the living. I had not known I was waiting. The description told me I had been. What the secret did was not what secrets usually do. Secrets usually produce the discomfort of the revealed. The exposure of something that was maintained in privacy and is now in the light. They create the specific vulnerability of someone who has been seen in a way they did not choose to be seen. This one produced something else. It produced the understanding that she had been told something true about me and had not used it carefully or carelessly or as information to be filed and applied. She had brought it to me directly, had handed it back, had said, someone said this about you and I think you should have it because it is yours and not mine to keep. The handing back of the thing that belongs to you, that is not a small thing. That is the specific honesty of someone who has received private information and understood that the person it is about has more right to it than the person who received it. She gave it to me. There was a longer conversation after. Not immediately, I needed a moment with the image before I could talk about it, waiting for a flight that hadn't been announced yet. I sat with that for a few minutes while she waited without filling the silence, which is itself information about a person, the willingness to let the silence be what it needs to be. Then I said, "That's accurate." She said, "I thought it might be." I said, "You thought about it before you told me." She said, "I thought about it for 3 days. 3 days. She had been carrying the thing about me for 3 days before she decided what to do with it. Had been in the room with me in the evenings and the ordinary hours, and had been holding that image waiting for a flight that hadn't been announced, and had been deciding whether it was the kind of thing that should be said or the kind that should be absorbed quietly and used only for the private understanding. She had decided it should be said. I asked why. She said, "Because I think you should know what you look like from the outside sometimes. And because the person who said it with care." It wasn't gossip, it was observation. The distinction she was making between gossip and observation. The fact that she had made that distinction before deciding to pass the thing along. That she had assessed the quality of the source and the quality of the information and the quality of what it would do to me to receive it before she decided to bring it. 3 days of that assessment. I want to say something about what it means when someone handles information about you with that quality of care. I've had people receive private things about me and use them badly. Not from malice always. From the specific carelessness of someone who does not understand that information about a person is not neutral. That it carries the person with it, that how you handle it is how you are handling the person. She understood that. The mutual friend's observation about me. Casual, secondhand, produced in the middle of a conversation about something else, arrived in her hands and she held it the way you hold something that is not yours to keep. Carefully, with the awareness of its ownership, and she returned it to the owner. I am the owner. She returned it. After the conversation, a different thing happened. Something I was not expecting and could not have predicted from the context of what we had been talking about. She said, "Can I tell you what I think it means?" I said, "Yes." She said, I don't think you were waiting for a person. I think you were waiting to be ready for a person. Those are different things." I looked at her. She said, "Waiting for a person means the person is the thing that has to arrive. Waiting to be ready means the becoming was the thing that had to happen first. And you can't hurry the becoming. It takes as long as it takes, and while it's happening, you look unlanded because you are. You're not supposed to land until the becoming is finished enough." I did not say anything. She said, "I think you were finishing something, not waiting for me. Becoming the person who could be with me without either of us losing anything." That sentence. I've been inside that sentence for weeks, turning it, look at it from different angles, testing it against what I know of the previous years, against the quality of the time I described as waiting for a flight that hadn't been announced, against the specific work that the period had produced to me, the interior work, the kind that does not generate external evidence, the kind that only reveals itself in retrospect when you can see what it produced. Becoming the person who could be with me without either of us losing anything. She had arrived at a description of the previous years that I had not arrived at myself. Had taken an outside observation, held it for 3 days, sat with me in the conversation, and produced interpretation that reached somewhere the original description had not. Not because she is smarter than I am about this, because she was looking at me with the specific quality of her attention, and from a position that I do not have access to, the outside. She can see things I cannot see. The shape of me from a direction I cannot stand in. She used that position generously, not to diminish, to illuminate. Here is the thing about the secret that I have not said yet. When she told me what the mutual friend had said, waiting for a flight that hadn't been announced yet, and when she told me what she thought it meant, becoming the person who could be with me without either of us losing anything, I felt something shift in the way I thought about the period before her. I had been carrying the previous years as a neutral thing, as just the time that passed before this time, the phase that preceded the current phase. I had not attached a meaning to it because meaning requires a frame and I had not had a frame for it. She gave me the frame, and inside the frame, the previous years looked different, not wasted, not the absence of arrival, the preparation for it. The specific, necessary, could not be hurried preparation of a person who needed to become something before the arriving was possible, who needed the time not as delay, but as material, as the actual substance of the becoming. The time was not the wait, the time was the work. I had not known that until the secret arrived secondhand from a mutual friend who said it casually, and she held it for 3 days and brought it to me with the care of someone who understood that it was mine. I drove home that night with the image still present, the flight that hadn't been announced, the becoming that had to happen first. Her voice sang without either of us losing anything, and somewhere on the drive the image shifted slightly. The flight had been announced. I had not heard the announcement because the announcement was not verbal, was not the thing you hear with the ear. It was the thing you feel when the landing finally happens and the contrast reveals that you were in the air before. I had landed. The contrast was her. The announcement had been her presence, which changed the quality of the before by becoming the after. She did not know she was the announcement. She does not know I thought of it this way. I am still deciding whether to tell her. Not 3 days of deciding. More than that. Because some things require the specific time they require and cannot be hurried. And she of all people would understand that. She is the one who told me so, not the planned Thursday. Not a Thursday I had identified in advance as the right one. Just Thursday, which arrived like all Thursdays arrive, without asking whether you're ready for it. And something about the quality of the evening made the caring feel unnecessary. Not the romantic quality, not candlelight, or the specific atmosphere of a moment arranged for saying significant things. The ordinary Thursday quality. Leftovers. Her feet on the coffee table. Some show neither of us was fully watching. The ordinariness was why. I have learned this about myself through her, that the true things come out in the ordinary moments, not because I plan them there, because the ordinary moments are the only ones where the management is fully offline, where the part of me that assesses the timing and the framing and the sufficientness of the words has stopped running, where the thing that wants to be said simply says itself, because there's nothing in the room asking it to wait. I said, I've been thinking about what you said. About the becoming. She did not look up immediately. Finished the thing she was doing with her hands, folding something, adjusting something. I cannot remember the specific action. Then she looked at me. She said, which part? I said, the part about becoming the person who could be with you without either of us losing anything. I've been thinking about whether it's true. She waited. I told her about the years. Not the summary version, the interior version, the specific texture of the period the mutual friend had described as waiting for a flight that hadn't been announced. What it had actually been like from the inside, the work that had happened there that did not generate external evidence. The particular ways I had failed at things and what the failing had produced that the succeeding would not have. The version of myself I had arrived at through those years. Not the finished version, not the resolved and complete version, but the version that was finally honest enough about its own incompleteness to be useful to someone else. I had not said most of this out loud before, not to her, not to anyone. It had lived in the interior in a specific way of things that have not yet found their listener. Things that are true and fully formed and waiting for the specific quality of attention that will receive them without requiring them to be other than what they are. She was that attention. I could feel it while I was talking. The specific quality of being received accurately, not just heard, received. The distinction matters enormously and most people do not make it. Hearing is the processing of sound. Receiving is the thing that happens when what you say lands in someone and does something there, changes something, sits down and stays. She was receiving it. Every part of it. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Not the uncomfortable quiet, the full quiet, the one that has something in it. Then she said, I want to tell you something I haven't said yet. I said, okay. She said, when the mutual friend told me what they said about you, the waiting for a flight thing, I didn't feel sorry for you. I felt something else. I asked what? She said, relieved. I felt relieved. I did not immediately understand. She said, because I had been wondering whether you were actually here, whether the landing had actually happened, or whether I was with someone who was still in the air and I just couldn't tell yet. And when I heard that before me you have that quality, the unlanded quality, it told me that what I was feeling now was real information. That the difference I could feel between the before and the now was actual, that it wasn't me projecting. She said, you feel landed to me. I needed to know that was real and not imagined. I have thought about that word ever since, landed, not as a metaphor for contentment or stability or any of the general things it gets used for, as the specific, physical, felt thing. the quality of a person who is actually in contact with the ground they are standing on. Here is not hovering at the slight remove that the unlanded have present but not in contact, warm but not in contact, everything slightly above the surface rather than on it. I had been hovering. She could feel that I was not hovering anymore. And her feeling it, her relief at the confirmation that the landing was real, was the most honest thing anyone had said to me about what the period had looked like from outside. More honest than the mutual friend's observation, which was also honest. Because the mutual friend had described it before, she was describing the now. The contrast, the specific difference she could feel between a person who is still in the air and a person who has arrived. She knew the difference. She was the cause of the difference. We did not make the evening into the evening. I want to say that because the version of this that becomes the event is not what happened. The show we were not fully watching eventually became a show neither of us was watching at all, because we had moved into the conversation, and the conversation went the way it went, not linearly, not toward a conclusion, just through the real things, the way conversations go when the room is honest. At some point I said, I think you should know that I almost didn't say any of this tonight. She said, what stopped you from not saying it? I said, the leftovers. There was something about the leftovers. She laughed, the stomach laugh. She said, that is the strangest and most accurate thing you ever said. I said, I mean that the ordinariness was the permission. I don't say the real things in the significant moments. I say them when nothing is asking me to. She thought about that. Then she said, I'm going to make leftovers more often. Later, not that night, but in the days after, I thought about what the secret had actually done. Not what it contained, what it did. The specific function of it in the narrative of what we were building, because secrets that arrive secondhand do not usually function as gifts. They function as complications. They arrive with a specific weight of information that was not supposed to travel, and the traveling has made it strange, made it something to be managed rather than received. This one functioned as a gift, because she handled it that way. 3 days of deciding, the returning of the thing to its owner, the conversation that followed, the interpretation she offered that gave the previous years a frame they had not had. All of it produced not the exposure of the secret, but the expansion of the knowing between us. She used the information to know me better, not to have information about me, to know me. The distinction is the whole thing. Information about a person is external. Knowing a person is interior. You can have extensive information about someone and still not know them. You can know someone with very little information if the information you have goes to the right depth. She always goes to the right depth. The secret had one more function I did not understand until recently. It established something about how she handles the things that belong to me, the private things, the interior things, the things that arrive in her possession, not through my giving, but through the ordinary information passing of a social world that does not always ask permission before it moves a thing from one person to another. She handles those things with the specific care of someone who understands they are not hers. I have been watching for this, not suspiciously. With attention, the same attention I gave her in the room at the gathering before I crossed to talk to her. The attention that wanted to know whether what the initial impression suggested would hold under the sustained observation, it is held. Every time something reaches her that belongs to me, an opinion someone has offered about me, a piece of context about the past, a thing said by someone who knows me in a different register than she does, she handles it the same way, with the 3-day quality, with the assessment of whether it should travel further, with the returning of it to me when the returning is the right thing. She does not accumulate material about me as material. She uses it to understand me. I want to say something about what I think a future wife actually is, not the role, not the function, the thing, the actual substance of what the future wife means when the phrase is not a category but a specific person. I have been forming this understanding slowly and I am not finished forming it, but here is what I have so far. The future wife is the person who handles your inside things with the care they deserve, who receives the private version of you without making it strange, who rolls the things that arrive in her possession that belong to you and assesses them with the specific honesty of someone who understands that your dignity is not hers to manage, but yours to be protected by her, where she can protect it. The future wife is a person who tells you the truth that a mutual friend said about you and gives you 3 days of consideration before she does. The future wife is the person who feels relief when she can confirm that the landing was real, Who needed to know that the difference she could feel was actual? Who was paying close enough attention to feel the difference in the first place? The future wife is the person who says, let me tell you what I think it means, and then gives you the frame that the years were waiting for. I did not know this was what I was looking for. I know it now because I found it before I had the description for it. There is a last thing. The mutual friend who said it waiting for a flight that hadn't been announced yet does not know what they set in motion. It does know their casual observation in a conversation about something else entirely became the material of a Thursday evening that became the material of this. It does not know that the image they produce has been living in me for weeks and has produced more honest conversation between me and her than anything I had planned to say. I'm going to tell the mutual friend at some point. Not to make them feel significant. To be honest. To close the loop of an accounting that has them in it without their knowledge. Secrets travel. That is their nature. They do not stay where they are left. They find the people who need them and they arrive at the weight of the traveling on them. And what you do with them when they arrive is the measure of something. She received the secret and used it generously. I received it from her and used it honestly. The mutual friend released it without knowing what they were releasing. All three of us did the right thing with what we had. That is, I think, the best that can be said about any information that moves between people. That everyone in the chain handled it with the care the thing deserved. This one was handled well, from the beginning, by everyone, but most of all by her, who held it for 3 days, and then gave it back to the person it belonged to, with both hands.